house here in Singapore. And with me today, I'm very pleased and very privileged to have Ethan, who is a sort of a part-time musician who showcases his musical talent in this venue sometimes. But today, he will be talking to us about his latest book launch with his co-authors called Practical Cybersecurity Decisions.
Yes.
So thank you so much, Ethan, for your time today.
Yes, thank you for having me. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so, I think the first question that many people will ask is that there's so many cybersecurity books around, right? So what motivates or what inspires you and your co-authors to write this book?
So I think the biggest problem that we've always had in cybersecurity was the issue of communication. And that's why we wanted to write the book. Back in 2023, when I had a friend's family business that got ransomware 3 times, and realizing that there is a lot of resistance to even getting good cybersecurity done, was really shocking for me, right? And it was not particularly expensive considering the company was making 7-8 figures turnover. It was very surprising to hear that, hey, it is not as important to focus on cybersecurity because you just want to go back to operations and not think about it. That's after the 3rd ransomware. So when I learned all these things and I was trying to figure out how to communicate with these people, I also started realizing that a lot of friends, small companies, startups, and SMEs don't have cybersecurity at the top of mind or even anywhere near the top of mind. And that's when I started realizing, okay, there's a massive gap. And as I went for different conferences like Mandiant's, MYs, I went for RSA, I went for all these different conferences, I started realizing there's a humongous gap here that we can fill. And it is that people need to have better conversations around cybersecurity that is aligned to business rather than just, our technology or compliance or governance.
Right. So communication, like one of the human factors, they do say that cybersecurity is not just about technology, right? There's a human factor to it as well. So before we come to that, right, I want to talk a little bit about the target audience that your book, practical cybersecurity, right? So it's supposed to be practical.
Yes.
So if I may, I'd like to sort of talk about 4 different types of scenarios, right?
Sure.
So scenario 1, we have, say, a normal sort of business, very little limited knowledge about cybersecurity. How does this book help them?
Oh, it's great. Actually, this was initially designed for them. So it was designed for startups and young companies that, haven't even considered cybersecurity. They do that by having their business goals in mind, right? So profiling your own company, know that you're under lower risk because you're not high profile. You have just a basic website. You have this number of clients. Your earnings is less than $1 million a year. You already have a good idea of, okay, the likely attacks I'm going to receive are this kind, right? And because, I don't have that much money in the bank account, the likelihood of cyber criminals particularly coming after me is a lot less. So that's threat profiling. Then we go into what assets do I have to protect, right? And that's when you start realizing, okay, what are the key things within my company? So this is where if you have proprietary data, where do you store them? That has to be secured. So knowing where your data resides is very, very important. What information do you collect to your clients, right? What is it, personal information, all these kind of things. Then you go from there, you can build up an overall thing of all the different products that you have to protect. Then you go to the last bit where you kind of go, okay, how can I restrict access such that I can prevent attackers from coming in? And this is when you start realizing that a lot of the features, like for example, Google Workspace or Microsoft 365, already have a lot of features you need to protect your company. And if you're under low risk, you might just want to turn on the features rather than buy a product. And then as you start having more traction and you evolve into the next level of company, you're making 7 figures a year, 8 figures a year, then that's when you start thinking about, okay, maybe I need to buy EDRs. I need to buy certain products that help me protect my company a little bit more. And those steps can be very healthy and very, very planned for them.
Okay, so we just talked about a company, a young company or an established company with very little cybersecurity and how your book provides some practical tips in terms of some open source cybersecurity solutions that they can use, right? What about the second scenario? So, again, a young company with some budget, right, doesn't know where to start. So how is that different from the first scenario?
So they have the same profiling methodology, right? But because, for example, if they're well-funded, young company, but probably they have announced a seed round, for example. And actually where in startups, for example, if you announce a seed round, you're likely to get attacked right away. So there's always
interesting.
So people watch the press and they look for companies to attack. So the moment they see that you have some money in the bank, they're going to come after you. So, but then that's when you increase your to medium risk, right? And under medium risk, the last bit of the book, which is about zero trust architecture, comes in very useful. So it's about organizing the information, right? So if one of the biggest ways of identifying how cybersecurity works is identity first. We talk about this is people use the software. So the identity of me having this access has to be controlled. So that means only I get access. So that's why MFA, multi-factor authentication, all these little things matter a lot. And then we move to the next layer on the devices level. Are you having at least basic protection? Or are you willy-nilly just allowing everybody to access? Or are you downloading stuff onto your laptop without understanding what it is? Right? All these things would then come into question. Then that's when you have antivirus. You have different things to add on to your list. Then we start going to network, application, as well as data. So in each of these categories, for example, network, if you're using all internet, are you using VPN? Are you using this? Are you using that? Are you protecting your data? If you're using application, if you have a website, if you're using a certain software, do you update regularly? Do you have the right protections in place? If it says, is the access shared amongst people or all this kind of thing? So this changes the way that we approach it, where we are just focusing on how do we minimize and reduce the risk of attacks first, because that would be the first front you think about. And then from the things that you're protecting, you have a better understanding of, okay, what can I buy to be able to protect my systems?
Right. So the first scenario, we think back to the first scenario where it's a young company, very, very extremely limited budget and extremely limited understanding of cybersecurity. Yeah. You provide sort of practical tips to kickstart their cybersecurity journey. Yeah. The second scenario where it's again a young company but fairly sort of a little bit of cybersecurity. A
little bit more profile,
right,
a little bit of budget.
Right, so they do some risk assessment, I guess, to understand where they are most vulnerable and look at some solutions like multi-factor authentication to boost their security posture. Now we come to the third scenario, right? So these are companies maybe, with more cybersecurity knowledge and also with more budget, but they always constantly face this tension between, we need to innovate, we need to push out solutions. And then on the other hand, it's like, we have to practice all this security by design, which slow down our production. Yeah. So how does your book help them to balance this tension?
So the book, particularly for these companies, most of them would have a CTO or a CISO very often, or at least somebody who's in charge of technology or a head of IT department. So this is when this book was actually designed more for the other C-suites and the board members to really understand, okay, what is our posture? So one of the discussions I've been having with some financial services sector people is that how do you get the board of directors and the C-suite to really understand what the CISO is doing? Because this is a very important piece to have the right responsibilities to ask the right questions. Because if I'm only focusing on ISO 27000, how do I know I'm having the right security, right? So I have a friend in India who shared with me that one of the clients he has hires the Big Four for audit, but hires him for actual security. So it was really interesting, right? So they're saying, honestly, because audit is audit. This is to get our certifications. I want to know how we are actually secure. Because there are a lot of companies with SOC 2, with ISO 27000 still getting hacked left, right, center. The reason is because the actual security is not there. So my goal is practical, right? So are you asking the right questions and understanding the right defenses? Right, okay. So then from there, we can do a deep dive into what products they have. For example, you're having a firewall. Is it configured properly? Like if you're having identity, each person has an identity. Do you have dangling identities? When we talk about this is when a person is fired from the company, when a person is leaving the company, when are we expiring the account? When is the information moved over to another space? Where's the data stored? All these kind of questions needs to be actually understood by the leadership in order for them to be able to go, are we secure? Right? And then it's not just awareness training. It's really down to the path of what kind of awareness are you really covering? So I think this is where this book is the starting point of drilling into the awareness of what cybersecurity is all about, and the mechanical way of looking at cybersecurity rather than just a checklist or yeah.
Right, okay. So we are talking about helping companies to actually, with a more mature cybersecurity profile, their business leaders, to understand some of these, I would say, questions that we take for granted. This person is leaving, and then have we, expired?
Done the right,
Right,
Have we done the right procedures? Do we have the right policies that actually expires it? Are we doing it?
Right, yeah.
These are the questions that needs to be asked.
So some of these questions are seen to be too, overlooked, I
Yeah,
guess,
yeah.
when the person leaves, right? But in fact, it's very, very important
It's
because
actually it's one of the biggest attack points for a lot of
correct,
hackers. Yes.
correct. Insider risk and insider
Yes.
threat, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a big risk. Okay, I know that we can delve down into insider risk, but okay, let me go to the last scenario.
Yes.
So you have this established company, mature cybersecurity profile. We hear about this very often. Lots of money, but think, hey, it's okay. We'll cross the bridge when we get to there,
Yeah.
right? So how does your book help them to say, cybersecurity is really, competitive advantage. It's not just about the negative effects. It's actually helping you to boost your competitive positioning.
Absolutely wonderful question. I think this is where, so I showed this book and the framework to a couple of CISOs as well as head of IT risks of really mature companies. And the first comment they gave me was, this will allow me to train the rest of the people within my organization to understand cybersecurity. So that's one of the key goals that they have. So one of them was that asked me, hey, can I share this with my risk officer so that I can cross-compare what we see? I think this is where the book really supports in the clarity across multiple departments to have a business conversation about cybersecurity. So that's what it really is, right? So then it becomes an educational tool set to be able to communicate and go across to different departments. Because if you see cybersecurity as a pure cybersecurity role, I put it this way, a lot of people think that IT is an IT issue, right? It's not a company-wide issue.
Yeah.
But if you understand where, for example, AI is today, it's a company-wide issue. It's not an IT issue. We have to recognize that cybersecurity, because AI is also so rampant now, the chances of it touching every single person is almost 100%. And then cybersecurity becomes a part of daily life. And then therefore, how can we best communicate this and educate it with everyone? And that's where the tools, as this functions like a tool set for them to have those conversations, because it always realigns back to business goals, right? If your goal is to make more money, if your goal is to maintain operations, if your goal is to this, how does cybersecurity help you achieve that?
That's right. Yeah, that's a very difficult conversation to have, I think, because most companies still have the mindset that, because I want to be competitive in the marketplace, right? Cybersecurity thinking slows down my development process, slows down my business process. I need to, comply with a lot of regulations, right? So the impulse is actually, right, let's cross the bridge when we get to there, right? So okay.
That's a very important thing because we always think that, that dichotomous, the concept of productivity and cybersecurity are dichotomous. That means that the two ends of the same spectrum. Cybersecurity means more processes, slower growth. The other side is, higher growth. The latest trend in AI has shown otherwise. So there are now there's software like Bolt, Cursor, Windsurf that is allowing people to build software like this. And so what happened was that some guy announced on Twitter or X that he built his new SaaS software on Cursor, and therefore when he put it up online, within minutes he got hacked. His API tokens got maxed out. Everything got maxed out. His server got really badly damaged. And he was like, I don't know what to do, and then I don't know how to fix this. Actually, because of AI, cybersecurity is now going to be an important part of the process because of the ease of creation. So what used to be is, yes, cybersecurity looked like it was a lot of work because software engineers need to build features. But if you also understand where building features and software engineering was also in a place where there was a lot of bloat, there was a lot of holding on to things, there was a lot of, we need this feature to have cross-compatibility with our previous versions. And now with the ease of developing code and refactoring everything, maybe we do see a new horizon where software engineering is very different. So first up is, because of that, cybersecurity is a requirement. No longer productivity versus cybersecurity, because we're across the threshold of productivity. The other major part about this is now with GenAI and all these kind of different things, we actually have access to new tool sets that allows us to customize our own defense and put them away from the processes that will otherwise hinder, right? So there's already single sign-ons. There are already wonderful ways of accessing multiple applications within the company without having to worry about MFA, because one single source solves all these things. And then you have defenses that are on, browser detection and response, which is a new interesting category started by SquareX, which was really interesting because now you can control on the browser what the person does and where they can log in as well. So there is more and more minute control that you can have all the way down to the ground. And you can then create better productivity with this minute controls. But I think this is where it goes back to this, right? What used to take a long time to go through the compliance checklist, again, with GenAI, a lot of things have changed. I can go through a lot of it automatically because there's a lot of processes now. The logs analysis no longer takes as much time, so that also changes. So a lot of security automations has changed. So then my question to those people would be, with what's happening, how is cybersecurity opposite of productivity rather than an enabler for the productivity to continue being productive, right? Which is my angle of looking at this.
Right. Yeah, I think what you're saying is that the market forces will compel people to, accept that cybersecurity will become a competitive advantage rather than...
Yeah, it is already going to be because of
Gen AI.
Because of Gen AI.
Right.
There's so many leaky versions of implementations of Gen AI that is really, really bad for other companies. When DeepSeek first launched, right, their database was hacked all the way in and they were able to extract every single chat on there. That was a big fiasco, right? So cybersecurity is becoming more and more relevant thing. Just this morning, somebody just sent me the scam videos of deepfakes and all these kind of different things where somebody's, I think, $460,000 from a Singapore company. So we start, cybersecurity is now going to have to be at the forefront because of the ease of attacks, because of the frequency of attacks. And I think it's either you accept it or you don't. But, I'm here to help the people who accept it. Right,
okay. I think, I don't know whether you have incorporated that latest developments in Gen AI in your book, but if not, then,
I'm actually, launching this book was very important in the sense of this is the first of a series of books.
I see. Okay.
So one of the next versions is actually for power generation and power grid, because my dad is actually an electrical engineer from Singapore Power and Energy Market Authority last time.
Okay.
So we've been discussing this for quite some time, and we actually wrote a paper around this. And so right now the plan is to actually submit a paper and speak about practical cybersecurity decisions for power generation and power grid. And then I'm actually writing one with Deepak, my co-author, and a few other friends in the AI sector to be able to write around AI, because there is the element which is traditional cyber, right, which is your DevOps, your ML ops, your API access. And then there's the other side of the equation, which is guardrails, understanding how Gen AI works. And then we can also talk about the impact of developing software using Gen AI. So that book will be slightly different, but it's also around profiling, right? So if you don't know how to profile the product you're building and the risk factor it plays in, you're never going to be having a clear enough picture of what you're protecting.
Right, okay. So talking about profiling, and we just stepped through 4 different scenarios and I think we tackle pretty much the 4 different types of main profiles, right, in the business sector. So I guess my last question will come back to your first answer, which is about the human factor and communication challenges. So what are the typical challenges that you see when, you see cybersecurity professionals talking to business leaders about some of the issues and challenges? And I know that you also very quickly touch on some of these, how your book addresses some of these communication issues. So tell us a bit about some of these typical communication challenges and,
Yes. So, I had a really great chat with the CISO of a really large group in Philippines, and she told me that she started out technical, right? So she grew her career as, a technical person working in the SOC, Security Operations Center, slowly growing up in the ranks. And by the time she reached the position of CISO, she realized that majority of the time is managing people and communicating with them the value of cybersecurity and how to protect things while keeping the profits and revenue in mind. I think this is where the term BISOs, Business Information Security Officers, was a very interesting term because, hey, why is that important? Because, why do we need to communicate in business terms? And I think this is where getting people to believe in what you do is a major part of being in any organizations. So for the longest time, IT is relinquished to a position which is you're helping us manage all the computer systems, but we're still the one who decides what to buy and everything. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff within IT in companies, especially MNCs, where for the longest time IT was just the ones servicing the creation of these things or the management of these things. But then eventually through time, as Facebook and this kind of big tech firms came about, then IT became the thing, right? Software engineering, all these kind of things. And now that we've gotten to a place where that is happening, security is very often looked as the ugly child last time, before cybersecurity became a term. Most security people were the ugly child in the room because
the bad cops.
Yeah, the bad cops. They were the ones who did all the things, and they were not necessarily software engineers who were like the cream of the crop, right? So there's that kind of judgment. But obviously, as cybersecurity came up as prominence, you start seeing that the communication within those space was not well matured yet. So software engineers or CTOs know how to talk to business owners and go, if we build this feature, it solves our problems by getting this ROI, by attending to this kind of audience to do that, right? Cybersecurity, how many people say talk about things like this?
It's true.
Yeah. So, and typical things that we communicate in cybersecurity is, if you don't do this, we'll get hacked. And then we'll get hacked, then we need to pay this amount of money. So that does not really bode a lot of confidence that you're always like the naysayer and the bearer of bad news, right? So instead, if we go back to what's the business goals and what you're protecting, and we come up with the identity of protection, right? So when you're talking about, if you don't do this, you'll get hacked, and you use technical terms all the way through, we need to buy the EDR, and this is the next gen firewall in which we're going to do this, NDR is going to do this to protect that, and our SIM and SOC, You talk to a business person, what happens? Right? They don't know a single word that you're talking about. And so instead, if you say, look, we need to do these basic fundamental principles to protect everything we have. In terms of identity, we need to make sure each person has, isolated identities, clear, role-based access, such that we make sure that it's tiered properly, and therefore because look at what this company has had. This company had flat hierarchy. This one employee clicked on one wrong link, everything got hacked. I'm trying to protect us from getting to that ground. So that means if this person gets hacked, and we know that it's not a non-zero chance that people get hacked, the damage is limited to this area. When you explain it that way, and you're saying we're protecting the company and the department and the access to the data, it changes the conversation, right? It's really about, if we do role-based access, it means each person has different access, and therefore the key information or the key data that we need to keep is with us. And that becomes I'm protecting the value of $3 million, $4 million of the IP I own, right? It becomes a very different mindset.
Right, yeah. So I think there's a saying in cybersecurity, right? Cybersecurity is everyone's responsibility. It's it's a team sport, right? So everyone has a role to play.
Yes.
So I think for too long, when we see an incident, a breach incident, we tend to say, okay, the CISO, what has the CISO done or not done, right? Yeah. Rather than look at, say, for example, the initial access breach and,
the overall policies that are already in place, the way that culture works. And so, I love the aviation sector because they have this just culture. And we're talking about culture in companies. If you have a just culture, things improve a lot faster. And I say this in the manner that just culture means no blame for genuine mistakes. And more importantly, it's a holistic issue. It's systemic. Then you look at the systemic issues and you go down into contextual issues before you talk about the person.
Sorry, what is just culture?
Just culture is a format of looking at... So just culture is a culture that was set up by the aviation authorities around the world. It is meant to be where we allow people who make genuine mistakes to speak up on where the mistakes are made and not to receive punishment for it. And then at the same time, that all air crash investigations or all investigations have to be done fully with no blame of individual parties. Even if they are fully to blame, you also recognize how those people manage to get past all those barriers to even make those mistakes.
The party is learning the lessons rather than allocating blame.
Yes. And then we also look at Swiss cheese model. So Swiss cheese is where so if you have Swiss cheese with multiple holes, the whole goal is to cover as many holes, to be as many slices of cheese as possible with varied amounts of holes, such that you don't get past all the holes all at once, right? And then just culture is all about analyzing and going, how did all the holes line up to make this happen? So it's no longer just you're the one at fault. It's not just one person. It becomes a whole series of things. So it's really funny because the retaliation of CISOs towards cybersecurity breaches and being blamed for it is that CISOs, I see a lot of this within forums, also blame people. It's that, you see, the employees are like this. They are the weakest thing. They are the ones. And then what happens is that it becomes a blame game. Whereas if we bring in the just culture and we go, look, we didn't have the right policies, the role-based access did not work because this person clearly had access to PowerShell, for example, that was allowing the hackers to do, certain things that no typical employee would even do. Why didn't we limit the access? And then it will be a conversation where it becomes, okay, so there are procedures and systemic issues that we have at hand. Yes, the employee did click on the link, but it was actually spearfished at him. Oh, we know the difficulty level of this. Now we know, okay, people are genuinely attacking us. How can we improve our processes? When you blame, do you solve problems? No, you just say, that's the person's problem, move on. But when you identify how that thing happened and how you can play a part, how the policy can play a part, how the whole team can play a part, then you start seeing it as a general, a dynamics thing, right? And you can improve each knob and then improve the cybersecurity posture from there.
I'm sure that we can talk a lot more about this, cybersecurity culture and how we, build that culture, cultivate that culture from young or even in mature organizations or young startups. But let's leave it for your second or third book, right?
Yeah. For sure. There'll be, we can even go sector specific after that.
Oh, yeah, of course, yeah, definitely. So one last question. So for anyone reading your book, what is the main message you want them to take away?
So number one message is cybersecurity isn't hard. I think that the one thing is I want them to feel like, hey, cybersecurity is a very manageable concept. That means at the end of the day, when I read through this, it becomes, when people are telling me this, it could be just a complicated version of saying I'm protecting this asset, right? It could be, and they're telling me the mechanics of how to get there, and maybe I can go and understand it. And number two thing that I'm really, really hoping people gain is threat profiling is actually where you start. Because if you're just buying tools and you're just buying all the equipment and you don't know why you're buying it, and your risk profile is not even high enough, or your risk profile is so high but you're buying all the cheap equipment, there's a mismatch. There's a very clear mismatch between your profile and what you need to protect yourself. So again, financial services sector, for example, which is under higher risk, needs to not be, for example, using the cheapest version of firewalls as their firewall for the internal networks, but instead, having to use a little bit more complicated, more logs analysis, a little bit more sophisticated protection because the risk factors are higher, right? And if they can just understand that, hey, because my risk is here, therefore I do need to spend a little bit more, but I can optimize it, why not? And then third, and not the last at the end of the day, but hopefully people learn.
Okay.
The top three, right? The top three, the number one thing is, if people recognize that it's not about the money you spend, it's about how you spend it and whether you understand what you're doing, and that's what cybersecurity is, then I've done my part. Like this tree, right? Cybersecurity is easy, that you need to go back to your risk profile, and at the same time, you have to understand that how it works in order for you to really protect yourself. And that's really the key messages I hope people understand.
Right, so, and your book is like 50 pages, so I think it's easy read. So easy read, 3 takeaways. Yeah. I think it's probably something that all of us should get our hands on, and right. And yeah. I love your message. Cybersecurity is not hard.
Yes, yeah, that's the whole goal, right? That's why Practical Cybersecurity Decisions means you can make decisions about cybersecurity which are very practical and not going to cost you a lot of money and not going to take you a lot of time.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, let's start now with our own mobile phones, right?
Yes,
okay.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
That's another podcast for another day.
Yes, thank you.
So thank you so much, Ethan, for your time today.
Yeah, thank you, Jane.
Yeah, fascinating talk. Thank you.
Thank you.